I have to say it. I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. What?
How could you not predict at least 10 to 13 wins for next season is all I'm saying. But again,
Jesus Christ, 13 wins.
I said
you want an opportunity to play, and the Jets are giving me an opportunity to play.
I'm sorry. I just remember that you compared Gesicki to Kelsey. I'm sorry.
I did not. You know what?
About it, I am ready to get hurt again.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Battered Fins Fans Podcast. I am your host, the Bearded Fanatic. That is my co-host, the Battered Jets fan himself, Danny G. Danny, how you living?
Pretty good. I was thinking when I was listening to that intro, we're gonna have to redo that once Gesicki's gone.
You're absolutely right, because we're
you're not gonna be claiming he's a top 3 tight end anymore. I'm assuming.
Well, you know what? I could potentially be claiming it for another team, but you're absolutely right. It isn't going to be on the Miami Dolphins, and we'll get into that here momentarily. But ladies and gentlemen, there is in the off season, there usually isn't a lot to touch on except for when free agency rolls around, which will be March 15th, the draft, which is like April 26th through the 29th, but so once in a while topics do come up and you want to talk about them. And that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. Danny, I want to start hot and ready. I was about to say hot and ready. No pun intended for what we're about to talk about. I want to talk about one of my favorite players of all time outside of Dan Marino, and that is linebacker for the Miami Dolphins, newly enshrined Hall of Famer, Zach Thomas. My boy has finally made it in. Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations to Zach. I heard his wife is Colombian. So kudos to him.
Go figure, right? Go figure. Yeah. But Danny, I know you and I have battled since high school over Zach Thomas and how much I don't want to go on a limb and say you don't respect his game, but you feel like
no.
He's not.
I never thought. Look, I've always thought a Hall of Famer should be whoever was the best for a period of time at that position.
Yeah,
Ray Lewis, Brian Urlacher. Mm-hmm. That more or less encapsulated Zach Thomas's career. I never thought that he was the number one guy throughout that time. Do I think he had a great career? Yes. Am I saying, oh no, how dare they give him a yellow jacket? No. But again, I never thought he was the best middle linebacker throughout that time span that he played. So that's why I never would have said that he was a Hall of Famer.
I think that when it comes to Zach Thomas, I'm partially agreeing with that statement. Ray Lewis for me, well, there's Lawrence Taylor, Ray Lewis. Like there's levels to it. Like those guys, I think are by far the best linebackers of all time. I don't think that part should be debatable. But I think when you start mentioning people of Brian Urlacher, I think Zach Thomas gives them pound for pound the same exact stats. And when you go look at them and you look at them side by side, they literally have super similar stats. I mean, even in some of these stats, Zach Thomas beats out Brian Urlacher, which Brian Urlacher, this is no shot at him. He even went on a podcast and said, I have no idea how Zach Thomas is in the Hall of Fame. This was like 3-4 years ago. But the only stat that Brian Urlacher has over Zach Thomas is the sacks, which I believe is 40 for Urlacher and 20 for Zach Thomas. So that is just a 20 sack difference. And I don't think that's enough to have kept Zach Thomas this much time out of the Hall of Fame.
No, and like I said, I always looked at it as like the best linebackers at the time. Like I said, Ray Lewis, Brian Urlacher, Derek Brooks comes to mind.
Oh yeah.
So again, I never saw Zach Thomas. Right.
For me, he's in that nucleus of the Derek Brooks, Brian Urlachers. I would put him in that same. Even Junior Seau, I would put him in that same nucleus. For me, because I got to see him for so many seasons. It's the only team that I watched. Like I got to see what a game changer he was at 5'10", like 250, 260 pounds. Like that was also very impressive to me.
Well, because of his size, I also think that the people should take that into consideration because I think it's amazing what he did at his size. And again, no knock to him. Congratulations to him. Yeah. I personally didn't think it would happen because that's how I've always seen the Hall of Fame. Right? You got to be the top 1 or 2 at that position for a couple years at least. But I'm not going to say he doesn't deserve it because, obviously he was a great player.
No, I appreciate that. But there's other things. And like I said, one of my all-time favorites, it's literally, and it's easy to say because I think it's a lot of people's same list. For me, it's Dan Marino, Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor. Like those are my top 3
All time?
of all time. Like for me, that is the epitome for me of my Mount Rushmore. And I know there's a Mount Rushmore. There's 4 heads. I don't know. Maybe Ryan Tannehill. I had to do it. I had to do it just because. Yeah. See, that's the reaction I wanted to get. But out of my Mount Rushmore, if it was
put Brock Marion up there.
Ooh, come on, bro. That guy was a stud out here.
You know, Alindo Mari. I'd put Alindo Mari up there before Ryan Tannehill.
I like Alindo Mari because that boy was clutch. But no, like literally, if it was my 3-headed monster, it'd be Dan Marino, Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor in that exact order. And I mean, I'm talking about 1A, 1B. Like literally, I love these guys, those 3 guys almost the same. So nonetheless, we have another topic to bring up to you guys. And I think it's a topic that most people want to talk about because free agency is coming up. Upcoming free agents, who are you keeping? This is the next one, Danny. There are some, I don't want to say a lot of important names, but some names potentially that are leaving the Miami Dolphins if they don't get re-signed. And I sent you the list of all the upcoming free agents. If you guys want to know, we can post it in the comments after the show, just so you guys can see it. You don't have to go look it up. But when I reviewed this list, and we're not going to go through every single one of them, I said, who can I live without? And for the most part, when I look at this list, I can live with about 90% of this list because I feel like on most of these, money would be wasted.
They're not game changers.
Correct. None of these guys, well, some of these guys, a couple, can be game changers. I just don't think they could be game changers on this system, which we'll get into here momentarily. But for the most part, I think that this litany of players here, get rid of all of them, except for my one that I'm about to mention now. I would even cut people who are under contract right now just to free up some cap room. Even if we're going to have some dead cap money, I would still get rid of them just to keep the player that I'm going to be talking about, Danny, here. But when I looked at this list, and I'll start it off here first, let's talk about who is my biggest surprise that I would let go, and that's Mike Gesicki. The reason I wouldn't re-sign Mike Gesicki has nothing to do with the player. The guy literally got his franchise tag, didn't complain about it, signed it right away. He wasn't being used. Not once did he complain. Like, you want to talk about a standout teammate? That's Mike Gesicki. Now, granted, the reason I wouldn't want to keep him, I think this guy could go somewhere. And like Danny said at the beginning of the episode, we're going to have to change that intro about Mike Gesicki being the top 3 for Miami Dolphins. I think he does have the potential of being a top 3 tight end in the NFL with the right system and the right quarterback. Danny, for those reasons, I would let Mike Gesicki walk. Now, what are your thoughts on that one?
Look, I've always been a big Mike Gesicki fan. Last offseason, I knew the Jets were looking for free agents. We ended up signing 2. I really wanted them to go after Mike Gesicki. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Mike Gesicki. I think he's a game changer offensively when you're throwing the ball to him. But in Mike McDaniel's offense, he's obviously not a priority. Right. So it's like wasted talent, wasted money. So I'm with you. Even though he has the skills, it's wasted skills because he's not going to get utilized on this team. So I think for both sides, it's better that they part ways. So I'm with you. As good as I think he's going to be, and as much as it's going to hurt other Dolphin fans to see him be productive somewhere else, I just don't see how he fits in here.
And Miss Finns is a big Mike Gesicki fan. I even had this discussion with her. I go, would you still be married to him even when he leaves? She said, yes, that is my boy. He's my boy too, man. I love the guy. I love the player. I love the man. And I would hope and pray that we could find a way to make it work to keep him a Miami Dolphin. But unfortunately, I don't think he'll be here. But that moves me to my next guy. So before I tell you the name, Danny, the first thing I want to do if I'm the GM of the Miami Dolphins is I want to cut Cedric Wilson. Cedric Wilson for me, and I remember telling you at the beginning of last season,
conversation. Correct. And I told you this kid was not going to be what you thought.
Right. What I thought Cedric Wilson was going to be was going to be the standout number 3 option on this team. I thought that what he did with Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb in Dallas was just going to literally transfer from that team, that production, and put it onto this team. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. But you know who it did happen for?
Trent
Sherfield. And that's exactly from this free agent list is the number 1 player that I would bring back. I need to see him back on the Miami Dolphins. That guy was a solid number 3 option. Whenever you needed him, he would show up. He didn't drop a lot of passes. You want to talk about being consistently available as far as health-wise, Trent Sherfield. You want to talk about being a guy that could get you a quick first down? Trent Sherfield. And obviously, I'm talking outside of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. We all know what those guys bring to the table. But to talk about a viable number 3, for me, I would keep Trent Sherfield. How about you?
I'm with you. Look, nobody took advantage of a good situation as much as he did last year. When you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle running those deep routes, he was feasting underneath.
Correct.
Like he ate up those yards, and like he earned so much money last year. And is it going to be by the Dolphins when he finally is up for a new contract? I don't know, but I do think that he's somebody that you need to get because it's not easy finding a solid third receiver, somebody that can move the chains. And you have those two monsters as your 1 and your 2. Trent Sherfield being that sure-handed third you have to re-sign him. At least that's what I think. Because what are you going to do? You're going to keep like Cedric Wilson, like you said?
Yeah.
No, you got to go with Trent Sherfield.
And mind you, I know cutting Cedric Wilson is going to give you some dead cap money, but it is going to free up some money as well. Is it going to be a lot? No. But I think that there's no position for Cedric Wilson on this team if you are bringing Trent Sherfield. And if I was the GM, that's exactly what I would do. Danny, anybody else on this list jump out to you that you would say, you know what, this guy we may want to keep around?
Nick Needham, just
I
because
like Nick Needham.
I think you guys are going to be looking for a second starting outside cornerback. I don't think Nick Needham's that guy. But you need to, in this NFL, you need to have 3 solid cornerbacks. You need your 2 outside corners and you need your nickel. Yeah. Nick Needham could be that nickel for you guys, even though you need to shore up that second corner. I don't think you can put him on the outside. Now, I don't know if you want to talk about free agents that could come in.
We'll talk about it eventually.
Okay, because I have somebody in mind that you could bring in as your second cornerback, right? Okay. You could have X on one side, this person I'm thinking on the second, and then you have Nick Needham on the inside. And all of a sudden, you have a solid cornerbacks room. And I think that you need that in today's NFL. So Nick Needham, I think, is a necessity to be re-signed because he is good at nickel. So
I agree.
Nick Needham with me.
I think that's a solid name. And ladies and gentlemen, the rule was pick 1. Trent Sherfield jumped out at me, but that's not saying anything about Nick Needham. For those of you who watch Dolphin games through and through, you know the type of talent Nick Needham is at that nickel position. Obviously, he had to play a lot of cornerback too this year with the injury to Byron Jones. I would keep him. I would try to re-sign him, bring him back as the nickel because I think he is amazing at that nickel position. But listen, Danny, I could think he's a casualty of this as well because of how good Kader Kohou played this season. So you're talking about you still going to free agency and you bring a cornerback number 2, but Kader Kohou is going to be able to fill that nickel position very well if you decide not to bring up Nick Needham. And that's another reason why I'm perfectly fine if we do move on from Nick Needham.
Is there any chance that X is a late cut?
I would say for me, as of today, February 21st, I don't see a potential scenario where X isn't still the cornerback number 1 for the Miami Dolphins.
Okay. I have a free agent question for you. If you had to pick between bringing back either Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert, because I highly doubt they bring both back, which one do you bring back?
Wow. That's asking me to pick between pizza and pizza. Because one gives you obviously that standout
speed,
unforgiven speed in Raheem Mostert, but then Jeff Wilson's a banger, and then he does have some good speed to him as well. Obviously not as fast as Raheem Mostert. So
but I think you'll both agree that they're not both coming back.
No, if you put a gun to my head right now, if I had to pick one, I think because of Mike McDaniel, he knows both guys really well. He has to pick one.
He's going to go with Jeff Wilson.
I think he's going with Jeff Wilson as well.
Yeah,
that's my guess. We could be completely wrong, ladies and gentlemen.
For sure.
He could potentially not bring either of these guys back. And let's say Tony Pollard doesn't get freaking franchise tag. Tony Pollard is a Miami Dolphin. We're just saying, if we had to put a gun to our head right now and pick one, I think he brings back Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that Jeff Wilson, if he has to pick, he's going to pick him. I hear rumors about Saquon Barkley. If there's any truth to that, which I highly doubt, but if there is, neither one of them is coming back, and you're going to get Saquon Barkley. And I think Mike McDaniel runs a completely different offense, but that's a conversation for another day.
I agree. And that's funny that you bring that up because I think that this team does have some holes that need to be filled. Now, we're not going to bring any of those up today. I'm only going to bring up one player that I think would be an amazing fit for this upcoming Miami Dolphins season. We're going to be touching on having full free agent episodes coming up. Obviously, with March 15th being that free agent date, we'll drop those episodes coming up. As far as like priority list for us, we'll drop what I believe is the priority list for these Miami Dolphins. But Danny, I got one name for you, and I know you have one name for me because you just mentioned that you do have a potential corner that you would probably bring in. But let me hit you with mine first. I think on my priority list, and we won't go into all of them, I will tell you that I think linebacker needs a serious upgrade. For me, if I had to go out there and get a game changer of sorts, I think this name should be at the top of the Miami Dolphins priority list. And for me, I would go with Lavonte David from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that if you bring a guy of that caliber, that experience to this Miami Dolphins linebacker room, and Jerome Baker is under contract, but like we said, Vic Fangio does like to run a lot of cover 4, cover 6. He likes running a 3-4, a 3-4, hiding that scheme as well. Like sometimes you have linebackers in there, sometimes you have DNs in there. Like he runs a lot of different things. I think bringing in Lavonte David would automatically be an upgrade at the linebacker room. And just again, you want to talk about a standout piece, Lavonte David could fill that hole.
Do you think that having Emmanuel Ogbah, you got Jalen Phillips, and then you got Bradley Chubb, that he's going to have all three out there at the same time?
I think there's a scenario where you could run it like that. Like you have Emmanuel Ogbah move towards the middle. I know Christian Wilkins here. I know Zach Sealer's still going to be here, but I think
so I'm wondering where they all fit. Would he put them out at an outside linebacker?
Right. I think there's a potential where you do see them at outside
on the ground,
and you see Emmanuel Ogbah standing up. I personally, and I know that we beat this over the drum a few weeks before when we were talking about potential defensive coordinators. I wanted somebody to come in here and run that 4-3, hands on the dirt. Your job, your responsibility. DNs, get to the quarterback. Defensive tackles, stop the run, stuff that middle. That would be my type of thing. But I think, you know how you said that. What do I think? Xavier Howard might be a cap casualty and he might be let go. Emmanuel Ogbah is a potential name out there that he could be potentially let go because of how many solid defensive ends you currently have on the team.
I was going to bring that up because I think he underperformed last year.
Right.
But when I looked at his contract, in dead cap, it'd be $21 million.
Right. And that's why I don't think he will be let go.
Exactly.
That's a lot of cap to let
go.
That
is a lot of money. So I was going to bring that up during this episode, but when I saw that, I was like, he's not going anywhere.
Right. So I think that he will be a rotational player. And I think you have a lot of knowledge on this. Quinnen Williams, at one point in the season, he was being rotated in and out a lot. And I think the type of defense we're going to be running, that there is going to be some rotations. And I think Emmanuel Ogbah is going to be that guy. You'll probably have Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips as your main starters. And then you'll have Emmanuel Ogbah coming in on specific downs.
Look, and it's always good to have fresh legs when you're going in a long drive or just throughout the game, period.
Especially down here.
When you have those edge rushers playing against those offensive linemen that are tired, then you get a fresh Emmanuel Ogbah coming off the edge. Yeah, like that can't be anything but good to have depth at that position. I don't think that all three of them are going to be together past this year. After this year, the cap hit is $4 million. So
right,
if he's going to get cut, it's going to be next summer. So I enjoy these three guys while you have them this year.
I agree. All right, so what's your number one guy that if you had to bring in somebody right now for these Miami Dolphins, who would be that guy?
So I think that you guys are lacking in cornerback just because I feel like X took a step down. Maybe he was injured. Maybe he's gonna step it up again. I think having Kohu and Needham fighting for that nickel and dime position, that's great depth, but I don't think either one of them is a 2.
Yeah.
I would get James Bradbury.
Now
I know that he was Mr. Holding in the Super Bowl and a lot of negative attention, but when he was the number 1 on the Giants, he wasn't necessarily doing that great because he had that number 1 assignment.
Right.
But once he went to the Eagles and he was the number 2, he blew up. He's a great number 2. If you have X playing the number 1 and you can have James Bradbury at the number 2, I think you now have your 2 solid starters if we believe that X can be that once again. Now, you're telling me that there's going to be a position probably open at that number 2, though, because as of right now, there isn't.
I would cut Byron Jones like it's nobody's business. I would trade him for a 5th-round pick. I would trade him for a bag of Skittles and a 7th-round pick. I think at the end of the day, I don't want anything to do with this guy. For Sam Madison to come out and say, like, at one point, we didn't even know where this guy was. He stopped checking in. It's like you have that type of relationship with the team that you're on that's currently paying you some ridiculous amount of money that you haven't rightfully earned. Get rid of this guy. I feel strongly about getting rid of this guy as I felt for you getting rid of Zach Wilson. Obviously, a topic not worth talking about it right now, but just to kind of give you an idea, of how badly I don't want Byron Jones on this team.
Right, and it says he has a potential out. I don't know if it's a player option or a team option, but I don't think he'll be back either. So, James Bradbury, I think would be a great pickup for you guys.
That's a solid name, by the way. I forgot to tell you,
Right.
that is a solid name. I would take James Bradbury in a heartbeat. Before Levante David, no. But if I can't get Levante, I wouldn't mind James Bradbury at all.
With the names that you have on this defense already, and you have Fangio running this defense now, if you can add that solid second cornerback, and then you have a solid 2 nickel and dime, I mean, you guys are basically set as far as your defense goes. So I would definitely look to shore that up. Obviously, if you can get Levante Davis, I don't know if that's really an option. I can't imagine he actually leaves Tampa, but if he does, that would be a great get also.
Right. And again, a lot of things can happen between now and the legal tampering period, and then obviously officially on the 15th, what kind of moves the Dolphins make to be able to create more cap room. But those are going to be topics that we're going to drop for you guys. We're going to drop consistent free agency episodes upcoming here. Ladies and gentlemen that have liked and commented already on the Battered Fins Fans logo, I appreciate you. That was a culmination of about 4 to 6 weeks, and Mythic Rabbit literally coming through in the clutch and getting my vision and putting it on paper. Some little fixes here and there, but ultimately I think they dropped a great logo to basically represent the Battered Fins Fans fan base. But nonetheless, Danny, as always, I appreciate you coming on here talking some Miami Dolphins football with me, as much as you may dislike it because I asked you to take your Jets hat.
I'm wearing a Miami hat. Miami,
I appreciate
but it's a Miami hat.
I appreciate that.
I got you. Look, I love talking football, and it's always good to be behind enemy lines and kind of see what's going on this side. So
right. But ladies and gentlemen, as always, go in the comment section, drop the names that you would want to keep, drop a name that you'd want to bring in. If you just had to bring in one guy from upcoming free agents from another team, who would be that one guy to bring in? And real quick, I know we didn't mention it. The only reason I wouldn't touch Saquon Barkley, not even because of injury, I think that for me, you have to shore up your O-line before you bring in any running back or spend on the running back room. You need to shore up that O-line, not just for Tua's sake, but to make sure that we create better holes for our running backs. But ladies and gentlemen, drop it in the comments, hit the like button, subscribe to your boy, the Bearded Fanatic. That is the Battered Jets fan, Danny G. I am Manny. You all have a great night.